You're listening to The Manning Report with your host, James David Manning. The news behind the headlines.
Let me say this about the report on yesterday about the event of Mueller testifying before Congress, that he was sloppy, he was incoherent, he looks as if he's suffering from Alzheimer's, though he's only 12 days away from being 75 years of age. He did not seem to be in command of the material. And in many ways, he was beaten down even by Democrats who tried to get him to respond to what he had already written in the report. It appears to me that Mueller was a major, not only disappointment, but a disaster. I mean, he was a train wreck in Times Square on New Year's Eve, just before the ball dropped. And the other thing I think that we need to be aware of, and perhaps the Democrats should have been aware of, somebody should have scoped him out about his performance abilities, is because we live in a performance-driven world. We live in a world where your performance, your theatrics, you have to be somewhat of a showman, which of course Trump is an excellent showman. You have to be somewhat of a performer to capture the imagination. You need to have timing and all of those kinds of speech patterns that are riveting. Mueller had none of that. He sounded as if he was in the hospital bed on an oxygen, under an oxygen tent, let alone an oxygen tube. It was disappointing to watch him on yesterday. And I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. But for right now, let me just say this, that having watched and observed that, I want to draw you up close and to say to you, as one who has been raised up in the plantations of North Carolina, found my way to New York City, spent several years in the nation's prisons and some of America's worst prisons like Dannemora and Union Correctional Facility in Rayford, Florida. And now find myself for the past 40 years living and working in Harlem, the African-American flagship community of all flagship communities, and working to serve the poor, being a pastor, preaching the gospel, healing the sick, visiting the prisons and the hospitals. My perspective of this is that I am extremely, extremely alarmed that a segment of America does not care that Russia meddled in the 2016 election. That there's a segment of America, whether the highest justices on the Supreme Court are Bill Barr as the Attorney General, or Mitch McConnell as the leader of the Senate, or Kevin McCarthy as the minority leader, or others, of Mike Pence, Vice President, or others within the cadre of the J-Fifth or white, if you will, Republican so-called conservative, or people like Jerry Falwell Jr., the Salem Media Group, Robert Jeffers, a bunch of Southern Baptists. It is very disturbing that they care not that Russia put Tribulation Trump into power. You can push back on that, and I'll allow you to push back. That it has not been demonstrated in any statistical way, logically, that actually the work that and the meddling that that the Russians did was indeed effective to get Tribulation Trump into office. But what the FBI report and what Mueller reported on yesterday and what has been substantiated is that the Russian meddling and their purchasing of ads on Facebook and their influence of phony, if you will, issues reached 126 million Americans during the time of Tribulation Trump coming down the escalator and the election in November of 2016. Now, 126 million Americans were at least influenced, or they heard or saw Russian projection through their ads and through their Facebook promotions. That's 40% of the American population saw what Russia was doing. And it was also clearly demonstrated and not refuted. That information has not been refuted by one Republican. It has also not been refuted by one Republican that the Mueller report also indicated that the Russian meddling in the election 2016 was for the purpose of hurting and destroying Hillary, Jezebel Clinton, and the helping of Donald Trump. Not one Republican on planet Earth, not one Republican in the Congress, not one Republican in the grave will stand up and say that is not true. Not one Republican will acknowledge or try to defeat or dispute the fact that Russia had in its eyesight getting Tribulation Trump elected as a caucus from a foreign country that has no business interfering in our presidential and sovereign elections. The fact that no white man of a Republican, conservative, biblical, Salem media, evangelical, Southern Baptist genre is concerned about that is troubling, to say the very least. It is satanic, to say the most impressive. That they're able to sit there in their congressional seats, they're able to sit there as vice president, they're able to stand up in their pulpits and say it doesn't matter that Russia meddled. It doesn't matter. We're unconcerned, and we're unconcerned about pursuing the matter or stopping the same type of event of happening in future election. It is absolutely satanic that the white man, that the white evangelical Southern, and not all Japheth people, obviously, as you will very well see, and I will make note of, but the very fact that people can walk around and sit in their churches or report to Congress on a daily basis, and they are not concerned that the sovereignty of our electoral process has been hijacked by a foreign nation, namely one of our enemies, Russia, is very, very unsettling. But it's also very truth-telling. By that I mean, it states what's deep inside of the hearts of the people that are supportive of Tribulation Trump. It states deeply and concisely that there is a wretchedness in the hearts of Mitch McConnell, that there is a wretchedness in the hearts of the conservative Republicans, that there is a wretchedness that is otherworldly, that is satanic worldly, that our Constitution means nothing, and that Russia has the power to choose our elected official at the highest office. So I think that the fact that no one cares. I watched all 7.5 hours, and not one Republican, not one of these white boys, and I say that because I want to get your attention. I know that type of language gets your attention. It may cause some of you to turn off, but you will come back because you want to hear more. The very fact that Tribulation Trump was trying to build a Trump Tower in Moscow with a perceived gift of a $50 million top floor apartment or condo to Vladimir Putin, if he, as the State Department, signed off on this dream of Trump's prize building of a Trump Tower in Moscow. And all of this was going on while the election process was, while Trump was running both as a candidate for the Republican nominee and also as he ran for the presidential bid. And that not one Republican is concerned that Trump was lying to America, saying he had no business dealings in Russia. He had no dealings with Russia. He has never had any business dealings in Russia. While at the same time Michael Cohen was working with Vladimir Putin and Russian oligarchs to try to get that Trump Tower built. But for the white boys to say that we don't care, and some of you handkerchief head cooning black boy with your cooning selves who ain't got nothing and ain't gonna never have nothing, ain't never been nothing, to say that you are not concerned that Trump was running one of the biggest business deals of his life and lying about it. Moreover, that Vladimir Putin knew that Trump was lying to the American press, that he was lying to the American people, and could use that to blackmail him at any time. And not one Republican on yesterday, not one of these white boys, and by the way, they were all white, as you notice, white boys and white girls, not one of them raised a concern about the efficacy of that. Was that right? Is that right? Should Trump be able to do that? Should he be able to get away with violating the laws, acting in a criminal way? Not one person said it was wrong. Not one person said that the connection and the nexus of Russia and Trump's campaign was wrong. Whether it rose to criminal intent or not, which it absolutely positively did, it did rise to criminal conspiracy. It did rise to the generic form of collusion. But we all know that there is no way that the State Department or Robert Mueller could have said emphatically or demonstrated, because they have the ability to know and to check and to see whether or not the Trump campaign, that Trump won his election process. Let's see if I can move my microphone in a much more consistent way here. Let's see if that's better. All right, that they know and they could determine whether or not the Russian meddling influenced the election one way or the other. They're not going to go down that road even if they know it, because at that point it destroys all America's complete hope and faith in our electoral system. But the very fact that they have demonstrated over the past 2 years that they don't give a damn whether Russia meddled. They don't give a damn whether Trump lied. They don't give a damn about the June 9th meeting in Trump Tower. They don't give a damn about the back channels set up in the Seychelles Island. They don't give a damn. These white boys say, we don't give a damn about that. We're not interested. We don't want to hear any reports about it. And if Trump says it's fake news, while our intelligence agencies, all 17 of them, have declared that it is absolutely legitimate, they're saying we don't give a damn about that. We don't care. We are who we are. And so I think it's important that we recognize that there was conspiracy, that there was collusion. It's just that a large segment of America says that they don't give a damn about that, and they want you to shut up and let the orange-haired orangutan continue to harangue America and to violate its constitutional norms. But this represents psychologically a deeper sense of sickness and the loss of efficacy. And Trump very well may be, in the eyes of some writer in the future, that he very well may be the epitome of the worst that all people globally have ever thought about the white man. He very well may turn out to be the super evil white man. For many years, the white man has not been feared as some sort of a godly power, but he has been feared for many years because he has been brutal, he's been dictatorial, he's been barbaric, he has been murderous, he has been without sympathy. If you check the nations of Africa and India and other smaller nations and more peace-loving people, they've always viewed the white man as a super, if you will, tyrant, a super barbarous barbarian, a super evil, a man actually who Trump described the Mexicans as rapists and murderers, but the white man has raped more people than anybody on planet Earth 1,000,000 times over. If there's ever a rapist is there's ever anybody who's known for rape, it's the white man who has raped and raped and raped and robbed and murdered with impunity for years. And this, of course, has been always in the reservation of every other person other than white, including Jews. Every other person have always had that reserve in the backside of their tympanic membrane of understanding that the white man has been known as a rapist, as a robber, as a barbarian, as a murderer, as one who is uncouth, who's unsaintly, who is without civilization, and one who has never in all of his entire world ever known peace. But many nations, Asians and blacks and others, have tried to get along with him as best potentially. But it very well may rise at some point, like the Avengers or the Black Phantom, someone may make a movie, and well, Trump will be the alter ego represented as the true nature of all white men, save the ones who are now trying to stop him, that Trump will rise as the alter ego, as the true nature of white men have been since they stepped on foreign shores, as they set sail from England and other places in their barbarism, their rapists and robbing as they have gone. That Trump represents the epitome of what has been a well-known secret, and what every black man, not while driving black, but while every black man and every other brown man and every other person of every other skin color has always had to approach the white man with that understanding that he can rape, that he will rape, that he's never known justice only for himself, and that if you can ever eke it out for you, good for you, that he is a robber, that he is a murderer, that he is barbarian, that he is a war maker, that he is a war starter, that he is uncouth, that he's uncivilized, and that he's full of hate. Every brown and black person has had to cautiously approach the white society with that understanding that that's exactly who he is. And Tribulation Trump represents the epitome of that. That's, first of all, with respect to the fact he doesn't care about the constitutional conspiracy or about the fact that there was collusion, that not one of them raised a concern and said, well, we ought to try to find out if Tribulation Trump is indeed a just president, and how much influence does Vladimir Putin have over our political process right now. They don't give a damn. That's number one. Number two is that the whole matter of obstruction of justice. And Robert Mueller, as boring as he seemed at times completely incoherent. I thought to myself, why didn't somebody check him out to see whether or not he was camera ready or not? Why didn't they check him out to see whether or not he was ready for prime time? He seemed to have had his notes in a folder that seemed terribly disorganized, and the folder was off to his left. He kept leaning away from the microphone. He kept acting as if he was spooked. He didn't know where the mic was at the time, and when people were speaking, he was looking all over the room as if he was a Ray Charles trying to figure out where the sound was coming from. I mean, it was deplorable, it was despicable, it was disappointing, it was disheartening to watch him, to not thumb through the papers and thumb through the various without a consistency on one of perhaps the most historic meetings before Congress ever. Perhaps this was the most dastardly, drastically poor performance in the history of anybody at any time. I have seen mafiosi when the Cosa Nostra was being investigated by Robert Kennedy and others appear before Congress better prepared, better ready to deal with the situation, having prepared statements to push back on what they knew were expected questions. Robert Mueller yesterday was a disappointment. And the Democrats have nobody to blame but themselves that they did not validate whether or not he was camera ready or not. The boy was not. He absolutely positively was not. And I would think as well as that for the good of our nation, not just the Democrats, but others ought to have been concerned about this as well as to whether Mueller was camera ready. But moving on to item number 2 and volume number 2 as to whether or not there was obstruction of justice, the fact that the law does not apply. And we have to understand, though it was said in numerous times by Democrats that no man is above the law, what we now have to recoin, and we want to suggest to the Urban Dictionary that they pick up for a third time the colloquialism and the ability of James David Manning to pontificate and illustrate that the whole phrase that has governed a large segment of the Democrats' approach against Tribulation Trump, that no man is above the law, what that now needs to say clearly is that the white man truly is indeed above the law. That when you see a paradigm or Webster or some other than the Urban Dictionary were to make a statement about such, that the picture of the white man being above the law. He wrote the law, but it's not for him. He wrote the law to oppress other people. He wrote the law to strike fear in the hearts of others. But the white man is above the law. And the picture of that orange-hat orangutan, that public degenerate, that coochie grabber, that pathological liar, that fool, that buffoon, that idiot, Tribulation Trump's picture ought to be. And I want to encourage everyone who is thoroughly through with this process to begin to make posters and to put together a website and a web page that we're going to do ourselves, and to put together memes and to put together hashtags that the white man is above the law and put Trump's picture there, that we put it in the lexicon of things going forward, that the white man is above the law. The white man is above the law. He wrote the law for the brown and the black man, but the white man is above the law, and is demonstrated unequivocally on yesterday with the charges of obstruction of justice that was laid out by many members of Congress on yesterday, that the congressional representatives from the Republican, conservative, evangelical, religious Franklin Graham crowd said, we don't give a damn the fact that he obstructed justice. He did it because he was angry. He did it because he was frustrated. And as that little sissy, that little girl with all that sugar in his tank, Lindsey Graham said, that he has been harassed and frustrated over the last 2 years, so therefore what he did is justified. Well, my friend, let me tell you something. If we take that parable and say because one is justified because they have been harassed, that they have been troubled and attacked, then I want to say to every member of the Black Panthers, rise up. I want to say to all the members of the Mau Mau's, rise up. I want to say to every member of the Nation of Islam, rise up. I want to say to every militant black, rise up. I want to say to Nat Turner and all Nat Turner's followers, rise up. Because if it can be justified by the justification statements of Lindsey Graham and others, that if you are harassed, that if you are attacked daily, that you now have a right to break the law. So I want to say to the Black Panthers, rise again. Come on, Black Panthers, come on back out. You have a right to rise again. I want to say to the Mau Mau's, you have a right to rise again. I want to say to the Nation of Islam, who always reported that the white man is the devil, you have the right to rise again. I want to say to Nat Turner and all his followers and everybody else, you have the right to rise again. I want to say to Fred Hampton, you have a right to rise again. I want to say to Malcolm X, you have a right to rise again. You have a right to rise again because it's been demonstrated by the white Republicans with Mike Pence and Lindsey Graham and a host of others that if you are harassed, if you are attacked unjustly, then you have a right to break the law. So I want to say to all of those crowds, rise again. And I want to call on all Americans from Oakland, California, to down to Los Angeles, up to Seattle, Washington, deep down in the heart of Texas, over to Georgia, over to Mississippi, up in Detroit, and what few Hamites you have up in Maine, and all over Chicago, and New York, and Baltimore, and every place else in Cleveland. Rise up now and use as a constitutional mandate. You have a right to be violent. You have a right to lie. You have a right to obstruct. You have a right to violate the Constitution. The president and his men have demonstrated unequivocally, and it's now recorded in the annals of our history, that if you are harassed, that if you are ill-treated, you have a right to break the law. You have a right to work in criminality with impunity. So rise up, black man. Rise up, Black Panthers. Rise up, Nation of Islam. Rise again. Come back again. And now you can come back and nobody can lay a hand on you. The same way the obstruction of justice with Don McGahn being told to lie. And then after being told to lie about the lie that he was told to lie. All of that obstruction of justice that Trump did with James Comey, all of the obstruction of justice that Trump did with obfuscating, all the obstruction of justice, and the fact that Tribulation Trump refused to sit down with Robert Mueller and then lied about the process, meaning that every citizen now has the right. If no man is above the law, then the law is now, we have now got a new edict. And I'm going to write the new edict that the new law is that there is no law in America, and that every man for himself and God for us all. There is no law in America now, demonstrated by the white boys, the Lindsey Grahams of the world, the Mike Pence of the world, the Kevin McCarthy's of the world, the Mitch McConnell's of the world, that there is no law in America now, but it's every man for himself and God for us all. So rise up, Black Panthers. Rise up, Mau Mau's. Rise up, Nat Turner. Rise up, Maya Angelou. Rise up, because it's been demonstrated at the highest level that you can obstruct justice, you can witness tamper, you can dangle pardons, you can blast people in public that are being charged with incidents of criminality. You can blast them, you can threaten their fathers, you can threaten their children, you can go on Twitter, and you can go on Fox News, and you can blast and blast and blast. So if it's good for Trump, then it's damn it good for everybody else. There is no law in America now. We are a lawless nation with a lawless president and with a lawless Congress and a lawless attorney general who has turned out to be a mobster and a gangster. And I say unto you, there is no law in America. Every man for himself and God for us all. So brown and black people, unite. 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 The courts are not coming to help you. The Justice Department is not coming to help you. The courts, the presidency, the Congress, the legislators, they're not coming to help you. Unite. Unite. Unite, every man for himself and God for us all. We've seen that demonstrated now by the white boys, and what's good for the white boys ought to be good for the black boys. It is an absolute scream of what we see happening with the obstruction of justice and the fact not one white Republican said anything about it, that it wasn't right for the president to lie. It wasn't right for the president to force and to harangue and to get Corey Lewandowski and others to try to fire Mueller, that it wasn't right, and that this is lawlessness at the highest level, and what's good for the highest level ought to be good for everybody else. That's number two. Now, I think that as we conclude here today, we need to understand that the character doesn't matter, not in America anymore. And let me revisit an earlier statement of 15 minutes ago. Good or bad, racially or unracially, but the characteristics of the nature of the white man has been, by all others, brown and black, to be very cautious about him. And while there have been forged some great relationships between black folk and white folk, there have been forged some great salt and pepper relationship with with Sammy Davis Jr. and Perry Como or Frank Sinatra, and the clip, the group that he ran with, the Rat Pack. They've been forged some great relationships, I believe, between black folk and white folk, and there is no denying that. But the forging of those relationships have been that white folk have perceived black folk as lazy, as shiftless, as incapable, or mid and none of other things. And no matter how those relationships are forged, the white man has had to have in the back of his mind for eons the fact that this is the general consensus, or whether he's dealing with a black man of a PhD degree or whatsoever structure or abilities or achievements, the black man, he is approached cautiously, because what has been the white man's understanding of the black man, of that his insufficiencies. And we all know that. There's no denying that. And while there's still been great relationships forged, we also have to understand, in the mind of every black and every brown person, that the approaching of the white man, that he's suspicious of him. Suspicious of him, of his character as a rapist, as a robber, as a murderer, as one who is unjust, as the one who is selfish, as the one who is barbaric, as the one who is a hater, as the one who is a war maker, as the one who is a disturber of the peace. And the mind and the mind and the hearts of every brown and every black-skinned person, though he has been able to forge relationships in spite of those two juggernauts of character, predestinations of each other, these character destinations have been solid for years, in many ways well-founded because of the behavior of others. But I think it's important now that we look at the character of Tribulation Trump, and we look at those who say they don't care about his character. Now, when you can get pastors like Robert Jeffress or Jerry Falwell Jr., who, by the way, doesn't support Trump, Jerry Falwell Jr.'s wife got busted having some little 25-year-old Cuban ring her bell with her legs wide open, and Jerry Falwell Jr. doesn't want the world to know, so he's paid nearly $5 million of hush money that was orchestrated by Michael Cohen. But when you can get church people and Christians to say, we know who he is, we know he's a rapist, we know he's a liar, but we don't care. We believe that God sent him. They're saying that character doesn't matter. They're saying now finally, for the final and most important time in the annals of history, since man has walked upright on planet Earth, the white man is finally saying that his despicable character doesn't matter, and he should not be held in check. The church is the lead of this. The Southern Baptists, the evangelicals, are leading in the foray by saying his character doesn't matter. We don't care that he is a liar. We don't care that he is a rapist. We don't care that he's a bankruptcy king. We don't care he is a degenerate. They're saying that character does not matter. That your behavior, based on what has been the world's traditional norms of man's humanity towards man, is thrown out the window. In America, now with Tribulation Trump and Bill Barr and others, man's inhumanity to man is now the standard rather than man's humanity to man, or to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So I think it's important that we recognize now that we've stepped into an era where character does not matter. Nobody cares about whether or not Trump is a liar or degenerate. Everybody knows that he is. And so it's very important now that you don't miss this opportunity to hear this truth that is being exposed here today. Don't miss this opportunity. Come to terms with the fact that we have stepped into a new era. We have stepped into an era where a segment of the American populace, mainly 99.99999 Herman Cain percent white, does not care. They're not interested whether Russia put Trump in office. They're not interested in finding out. They're not interested in an inquisition. They don't care. In fact, they're as pleased as apple pie that Russia had the opportunity and that Trump cried out how much he likes WikiLeaks or called on Russia to assist him in bringing down Hillary Clinton with the theft of her emails and publishing them, they are saying, we don't give a damn. Now, you need to understand that water has gone over the bridge, that milk has been spilled, and you're never going to put that genie back in the bottle again. And anyone who thinks that you can now live a normalized life, what had been the pretense of us as Americans to be man's humanity towards man, or that character matters and that we shined our shoes and brushed our teeth and we put on our best appearance, that is now gone out the window. The perceived notion that have haunted, that Trump saw as a self-reflection when he came down the elevator and said that Mexicans were rapists and robbers. Quite frankly, there's no bigger rapist on planet Earth than the white man. He has raped more people than hell has a place to put him. Everybody knows he's the biggest rapist, he's the biggest robber, he's the biggest liar, and primarily, exactly what Trump was saying when he came down that escalator in 2015 is that this is who white people are, but let's accuse the brown man of that and see how that works. But be ye well assured, be ye well assured, be ye well assured, there is no normality in America. It's every man for himself now and God for us all. There is no constitutional norms. There is no protection under the law. There is no justice in America at this present time. No one cares, or at least the white man who now holds the reins of power with Bill Barr and Trump and Pence and McConnell and McCarthy, that they now hold the reign of power. And their reign of power is that the law doesn't apply to us. We are above it. But in the case of our using it against you, we will. But you need to understand, as we have now suggested to the Urban Dictionary, that it isn't that no man is above the law, ought to be a phrase that is extracted from the annals of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and the writers of the Founding Fathers, that you extract that statement that no man is above the law. But the true statement now is that the white man is above the law. And it's been sealed, signed, and delivered by the white congressional powers that be at this hour and at this time. So character doesn't matter anymore. It does not matter. It is not a mainstay. It is not a part of the American psyche, and we need to be mindful of it. However, I will caution this. I think character is not simply for the impression of first impressions upon those who would make note of character, but character is a sense of well-being. You don't act a particular way when you're in public and act another way of lesser character when you're in private. Character is character, and character is self-sustaining. In my underestimation in the years that I've lived and the people of noteworthy and honor that I've had the privilege and loving experience to deal with, is that character means something to us, whether it means something to anybody else or not. We want to be thought of as good people. We want to be thought of as honest. We want to be thought of as merciful people. We want to be thought of as God-fearing people. We want to be thought of as people who do good. We want to be that. We want that in our hearts. We've asked the Lord to clean our hearts and to clean our thoughts and to let nothing in our hearts be against him. No, we believe in character. We do. And I'm not urging you to disavow that at present. I just need you to know that white people, at least these ones that support Trump, don't give a damn about character. They are as void as character as the desert sands are of the ocean. So we need to be mindful of that. But before I complete the things that we have to say here today, let me go to the root cause of this. I'm a country boy, agrarian type. I've watched and I've planted, I've cropped, I've grown, and I've seen trees grow up as little twigs, start out as little twigs and grow up to be grand oaks. And I've discovered that the process of this is that the root that is planted in the earth, and usually it's hidden beneath the surface. The roots that hold the grand old oak tree out in our yard from years ago. And when Hurricane Hazel came through in the 1950s and blew that oak tree over, the roots were twice as long as the length of the tree. And the numerous roots, and they were multitudinous roots that was exposed once the tree was blown over, that held that tree in place. And what we need to understand now about what is happening in America with this public degenerate and this man that is above the law and these without character, historically known for years, white man rapist and robber and murderer and barbarian and war maker. What we need to understand now is that the heart or the root of this issue is not being discussed. The root of this tree, of this evil tree, is the fact that the white man is losing his dominance, the Japheth man. Now, I'll stop and say that not all white men are of this mindset, that not all white men are evil in that regard, and not without rehabilitation. I will not say that, but I will not say that as an emphatic statement, but I think we have a pretty good zero in our gun sights as to who it is that we are referring to. And we can believe that all people can be called to righteousness, and I'm going to do it standing on the great palace of worship platform, calling all men, no matter what their color is, to righteousness, to the blood of the Lord Jesus Christ. But having said that, here's the reason why lawlessness, here's the reason why the law doesn't work anymore. And here's the reason why these evangelicals, these Kevin McCarthy's, these Mike Pence, these Mitch McConnell's, these Jim Jordans, these Mike Getz, here's the reason why they don't care anymore about the Constitution. Because the Constitution is saying that the leadership of the world now of America rather, that the Constitution now mandates one man, one vote, and justice for all. The Constitution now mandates unequivocally that the leadership of America needed to be handed over to brown and black people. That's what the Constitution says. And that's what the Constitution mandates. That's what the preamble of the Constitution says. That's what the founding fathers had intent. That's what the government structure has said. And it says at this point in time that the white dominance that dominated American ideal, politicals and banking and money and power for so many years has come to an end. And it come to an end that cannot be reversed. It cannot be reversed with the present Constitution. The truth of the matter is, were it possible, the Tribulation Trump and the Mitch McConnells and the Kevin McCarthy's and the Mike Getz and the Jim Jordans and a bunch of other white men, these old white men, if they could, they would create a new founding fathers. They'd go back to Philadelphia again and write a new Constitution that does not give life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness to everybody. They would marginalize that. If they could. Of course, they can't. But if they could, they would go back to Philadelphia, back to Independence Hall, and they would rewrite a constitution, and then they would get it voted on in the American populace that they've excised from the Constitution. And so the fact that they're unable to do that, they're now trying to place justices like Gorsuch and like others, like Kavanaugh, like Kavanaugh and others who have come into the political process, or they're doing gerrymandering like you will not believe to take away, to small slithers of the black populace who can't vote for Congress so they can run the House of Congress. Is their way of, without writing a new constitution, writing a new constitutional mandate for who rules. But it will not work. It will not work. So I think it's important that we understand at this present time the problem here, and that one that cannot be resolved in normal ways, is the fact that white people are losing their power. And they're not losing it, it's lost, it's gone. It is stage 4 cancer for the white man, that he has no power in America anymore. And as a result of that, that's why the issues that have been discussed in the first half hour of this segment are so important. He doesn't care how Trump got into power, long as he's in power. He doesn't care about the violation of the law because the law is not on his side anymore. Finally, I would say to all young black men and all folk of love and justice for all and God-fearing people, you need to look at these Southerners, these Mississippians, these Georgians, these Texans and Oklahomas and others. You need to look at them and understand that the law is not on their side anymore. The law does not make them supermen anymore. The law And you know, Dr. King, and I'm loath to quote him for a numerous and sundry reasons, said that it'll be a great thing if America finally rose up and lived out the extent of its Constitution and what is already written as laws. Well, now is the time for that to happen. And as a result of that, it puts the white man in a minority at present, and he doesn't have the majority vote. And now he's acting like a lawless gangster at the OK Corral. He is absolutely without any concern because he recognizes that this is his last hurrah. If he fails at stopping the impeachment, or if he fails at placing Trump in power in 2020, then it's all over for him. He might as well go back to England and try to get started over there as a young Cockney, or go back to Ireland and start digging potatoes again, because it's all over for him in America. And I have to tell you, there's a lot of angst and animus in the brown and black skinned people where they ain't gonna show no mercy. There's been hundreds of years of throwing people in prison and not even caring whether they're guilty or not. And I'm one of them. There have been hundreds of years of calling for the murder, calling for the execution of black men like the Central Park Five and not caring whether they're guilty. There's been hundreds and hundreds of years of pent up anger in the brown and black people. And brother, the fact that you're not in control anymore, you might be safer in another country. Now, I'm not certainly telling you, as you're telling Ilhan Omar and or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Ayanna Pressley or Rashid Tlaib to go back. I'm not telling you to go back. I'm just giving you options of what potentially, because there is no way that this train that has left the station is ever going to return. And finally, let me say a word about impeachment. I'm for impeachment. Let me tell you why. You need to understand, and Nancy Pelosi is trying to preserve, you know, the Congress and the 40 seats that were won in Trump territory, that somehow or another those seats could be overturned if an impeachment process started, and it failed. Moreover, that, or even if it was successful, that and impeached Trump, it would be detrimental to the Republican Party in her position as Speaker. Moreover, Nancy Pelosi is looking in the rearview mirror of what happened to Bob Livingston and Newt Gingrich and the Republican crowd who impeached Bill Clinton, but the Senate did not acquiesce, and so therefore he was able to serve out the rest of his term. But it devastated the Republican Party, and so he's looking at that as potentially what could happen to the Democrats right now, who now control the House. And I understand that, but that's political. That's not legal. That is a political mandate. It is clear, and Nancy Pelosi is clear, and so is the Gerald Nadler and others, and Elijah Cummings and Adam Schiff and others, that Tribulation Trump is a lawbreaker and he should be held to the very statutes of the law. He's not above the law. And so whether it will cost you the House or not, you ought to vote him out. You ought to vote for impeachment, and you ought to impeach him. And whether the Senate says yes or no, you should not be concerned about that. You don't run the Senate. You run the House. And the House can get him out, or they can impeach him. He may not be impeached, or the Senate may not vote to put him out. But it needs to be clear about what you can be clear about. Right now, the white man that I've talked about over the last 45 to 50 minutes, who has lost his power, lost his dominance, lost his character, don't give a damn anymore, you're not going to win him over. He is who he is. The Constitution is against him. You're not going to win him over. Moreover, you're not going to lose anybody. People who realize that Trump is lawless, that he's a gangster, that he's running a lawless White House, that he's got that little twit Jared Kushner running around as a so-called Secretary of State and also Secretary of Defense and every other, and actually cabinet members are tabled. The actual duly authorized congressional appointed congresspersons are tabled, and Jared Kushner is now running the show. And that Trump is greatly bankrolling from his illegal. He doesn't give a damn about anybody, about himself. You cannot let this continue. If at the same time you get a bloody nose, you need to make sure that you don't let Trump continue to walk around. Impeach him. Impeach him. And I think Talila Rashid said it best on her night of victory there in Michigan, Minnesota. She said, impeach. We're going to impeach the MF. And that's exactly what should be done. Come rain or come shine. Nobody's going to move. No needle is going to move. And even if Robert Mueller had been Marlon Brando on yesterday, or some other acclaimed actor, it still would not have moved the needle. These white folk, they ain't leaving Trump. There ain't nowhere for them to go except to hell. And they're not leaving. And the people that are against Trump, the never Trumpers, they're not going to leave you, Nancy Pelosi. So it is my statement to you, impeach the MF and do it now. Make every member of Congress raise their hand, yes or no. Don't wait for a majority to come to you and say it's time to impeach him. Impeach him. And that's what I believe. Here's what I absolutely know, not believe. Nancy, hey, Nancy, let me tell you something. If you cannot succeed at impeaching Trump at this statement, at this juncture, with all of the vile things that he has done, you can't win the 2020 election. You need to understand something. You're hoping that you can win the 2020 election and get him out that way. But you need to understand, if the powers that be are so strong that you would fail at impeaching him, or that you're afraid to impeach him, those same powers will put him back in office. You need to go before the Lord, call your Congress together, and then vote to impeach, and let the chips fall where they may. But at the very least, the Constitution and the rule of law will be on your side. So I say, impeach the MF. I will not give the graphic terms of those words, but I think it's time for an impeachment, and it needs to get started with an impeachment inquiry. And with an impeachment inquiry, you can get those tax forms just like that. With an impeachment inquiry, you can get everything you need to move that boy. I say impeach. I want to conclude by saying this. I've made some very truthful statements. I'm thankful to Almighty God who's allowed me to live the privileged and extraordinary, very powerful, experiential, and existential life that I have lived. I'm more thankful that that life is promised by Almighty God to be extended into eternity. I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for the people of the ATLAH World Missionary Church that give me their support in the most difficult times, because no people want to hear the truth. And the thing and way in which I have honored, unlike Dr. Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or Nelson Mandela or others who've tried to liberate the so-called black man. They've tried to liberate him by pointing the finger at the white man. But I've taken a different course of action. My course of action has been to tell him the truth for this simple reason. Jesus, my Lord and Savior, said, it's the truth, not civil rights, not Lyndon Johnson. It is the truth that will set you free. I will never change from that. But I want to thank God for the people that have stood with me. And those of you who have supported and been a part of the process over the years, that have witnessed and listened to the things that we have been able to say, and they have supported us, I want to thank you as well. But be mindful. There needs to rise up the Black Panthers again. And every organization who can, because of their skin color or other, who states that they have been oppressed, they now have a right at the highest level of deliberation in America now to determine and say that we have a right to violate the laws because we have been harassed. We have a right to not respect the judicial system, the way Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell and others are saying about Tribulation Trump. He was allowed to violate and obstruct the Constitution because of the continual daily attacks by the media regarding his illegal presidency. Finally, back in the latter days of 2007, I stated that Hillary Clinton would be president when she was running against Barack Hussein Obama. And I want to take you back on a time journey, just for just a moment, through the time tunnel. And had justice been done, not racial justice, but a constitutional justice had been done, Hillary Clinton would have been president. And God said it, not because she's a better person, not because she's ethical or moral. She may be extremely unethical and immoral. But I don't think anybody riding or walking or living today can imagine that Hillary Clinton could have ever risen to the level of lawlessness and bastardization of our racial and cultural and constitutional norms that Tribulation Trump has risen to. I don't think anybody in their wildest imagination would attribute that amount of evil. And while Hillary Clinton can be evil, there's no doubt about that. But I don't think it's within Hillary's ability or in her genes or her genome to be as evil and barbaric and ruthless and lawless as Trump. Moreover, I don't think anybody in America would support Trump the way Mike Pence and others are would support Hillary the way they're supporting Trump. And so I want to go back to that prophecy that was given. It was true. And had it happened, we would not be facing the conditions that we're in now. And we'll talk more to the Lord about this. But finally, we need to understand that we're in the tribulation. We are. We are in the period of time where God is deconstructing everything he constructed in Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 2. God is destroying what he created. And as a result of that, America's at the forefront of all of that. I'm his messenger. I'm his spokesperson. I'm open to discuss with you and talk with you. I ask that you would share this video with as many people as you can possibly share it before Facebook takes it down. And I would advise you, organize. Do not take my words as idle chatter. Organize. Understand that you have every right to now declare that if Tribulation Trump is above the law, then every man is above the law. You have a right to do that. And until America holds them accountable, it cannot hold you accountable. We don't have two constitutions. We don't have a white one and a black one. And so go back and listen to my calls for organization. Go back and listen to my calls for understanding. Go back and listen to my explanation of what has been in the backs of both the black man and the white man's fear about prejudice, about the character, about each person. As a white man may have perceived the black man as lazy, shiftless, and of no count. But the brown and the black-skinned man has received the white man as a murderer, as a rapist, as a destroyer of all norms and maker of war. These cannot be refuted nor mitigated. Take it to your family members and your social groups. NAACP, y'all need to listen to this. Not that your organization is valid, but you need to listen just to demonstrate that your organization is not valid. I'm going to be around for a while. I'm here at the ATLAH World Missionary Church in the middle of the world's most famous ghetto, Harlem. I'm here to sweep this community from river to river, that the streets might become so clean that men can take off their shoes and walk barefoot. God bless you, and peace out. This is a bit of a news blog we do, looking at spiritual wickedness in high places for the most part, making some observations about it and giving people a biblical foundation to the way of interpreting, rather than have Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham or Janine Pirro or Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow or Don Lemon, Rush Limbaugh interpret what's going on in the world. You come to me and I'll tell you based on what the Word of God says. They'll just give you their worldly, sinful view. But the Manning Report will tell you what God has said, whether to say yea or nay, whether to go or to stay. You'll be led by the word of Almighty God. Come to the Manning Report on a daily basis to interpret the spiritual wickedness in high places, because there's plenty of it that's going on. And so I am he. I'm the Lord's servant, James David Righteous Rebel Manning. And I'm here to serve you with news and information.